friends, welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Stacy and I'm the Chapter Conundrum, and today I'm joined by my husband Jake, the bookish drummer, and we're here to talk about our mutual fantasy favorites. So far we've done a few kind of videos along this vein. We've gotten like books we agree on, books that I like that you don't like, books that you like that I don't like.
But we can agree sometimes.
Yeah, we haven't yet done our mutual fantasy favorites. And I think this is kind of our primary genre for both of us. So definitely a good one to talk about.
Yes, and we're going to be going back and forth. I'll talk about some and you'll talk about some. And yeah, that's how we'll do it.
Yeah. So let's do it. All right, so the first book I'm going to talk about is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. And this is not necessarily a popular favorite, at least the whole series isn't, but we both really love the series. I think we have varying degrees of enjoyment in terms of like which book is our favorite.
So I gave books 1 and 2 5 stars, and then book 3 4.5 stars.
And for me, I had the best experience with book 3. So book 1 was a 4, book 2 was a 4.5, and book 3 was a 5.
But this is possibly my favorite fantasy trilogy of all time.
Yeah, it's up there for me. I don't know if it's my favorite of all time, but it's definitely up there. I think it has the potential to be on reread. I read this when I was brand new to fantasy, and so I feel like I didn't necessarily pick up on all of the nuance and things that were kind of layered in. And if I read it now, I would probably pick up on a lot more of that kind of stuff. So this definitely has the potential for me. But either way, we both really loved it.
Ren is probably one of my favorite female fantasy protagonists ever.
Interesting.
A lot of people will probably disagree with that, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, she's a very frustrating character to read at times, but she's definitely very interesting. I wouldn't call her my favorite female. We'll get to that. Or one of them anyway.
So speaking of fantasy trilogies, we have the Mistborn Era 1 trilogy by Brandon Sanderson, and we both feel very similar about the trilogy as a whole.
Yep.
We both really enjoy book 1, and then book 2 is pretty good, but not as good as book 1. And then book 3, it's my least favorite Cosmere book. I've read not all of them, but a lot of them. It's by far my least favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. It was definitely a letdown after the enjoyment I had for Final Empire and Well of Ascension.
But book 1 is the best Mistborn Era 1 book by far for me personally. And this is definitely unpopular. I don't know if you feel this, but I kind of wish this was a standalone.
I don't think it necessarily should be a standalone. I think there are things that I had theories about in the end of this that if I hadn't gotten answers to, I would have been upset. So I don't think standalone, but it could have been a great duology if we just changed some things about Well of Ascension.
Yeah, but this is definitely a book I could see myself rereading a lot. And then book 2 and 3, maybe, but book 1 is definitely the best.
Yeah, I agree with that. So speaking of some of my favorite female characters in fantasy, here's one of them, Masaki in The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. And this is an all-time favorite for me that I forced Jake into, and he didn't love it the same way I do, but you still had a good time with it.
I gave it 4 stars, mainly because it took a long time to get into. Like the first few chapters are a lot of world building and stuff that I had a hard time grasping at first. But then once you get into the kind of the meat of the story and the characters, it gets very compelling.
Yeah, definitely. I think the beginning is important, though, to have the best experience with this book because it gives you so much information that becomes relevant later on. So I'm not mad about it. It just could have been a little bit better paced.
And this book is very emotional for you.
Yeah, definitely. Have the tissues handy if you're going to pick this one up.
So let's go ahead and mention my all-time favorite series, not even just fantasy series, but my all-time favorite series. Might be able to guess it if you've seen my stuff, but I'm of course talking about A Song of Ice and Fire. I'm talking about the first book here, Game of Thrones, and I made you read this series.
Yeah, so I had seen the show in its entirety, so I already was very familiar with the characters and the story, but it was still great to read it, especially because the ending of Sword of Storms. Sword of Storms. Is that right? Storm of Swords.
Baby. Have you read the books?
Yes. The ending of Storm of Swords is where things kind of divert from the show and become a little bit different. So I kind of struggled with Dance of Dragons, I won't lie, but the first 4 novels are fantastic for me.
Yeah, and like I said, this is my all-time favorite. So all of the books are 5 stars, and I watched, I think, like the first 4 seasons, and then that ended, and I was like, oh, I gotta go read the books. So I read the first, all of the books, and then went back and watched the show. And obviously, I prefer the books. I love the characters. I love the world building. I love George's writing and his ability to just write really tense scenes, and just he's not afraid to kill off characters. Just everything about the series is fantastic.
Yeah, I will also say I also enjoy his female characters quite a bit as well. Like Daenerys and Arya are great.
And Brienne?
Not as great as the other 2 I mentioned, for me.
Okay.
For me. So next up, we're going to talk about another one of my favorite female characters in fantasy, and that would be Claire from Outlander. And definitely, this is one that I read and loved and forced him into eventually. And you also loved it.
So yeah, I've now read the first 4 books, and I will admit Claire is definitely one of my favorite fantasy protagonists now.
Yeah.
The first 2 books I really enjoyed. Gave them both 4 stars. 3 and 4 are okay. They're like 3-star books, but I won't be continuing.
Yeah. So I have kind of a similar experience. I've read the first 6, and 1 and 2 are my favorites in the series. 3, 4, and 5 are kind of like slower. I still had a good time with them and liked them, but they weren't the same for me. And then book 6 is where it starts to get really good again, and I'm very hyped for book 7.
But yeah, if I were to make like a top 10 female fantasy protagonist, she would be right up top the list probably.
Yeah, she's up there for me for sure. So I think part of the reason I love Claire so much is just because she's kind of like got different ideas and a different thought process than the people around her, obviously based on her position and her plot line. But that makes her endearing and intriguing to read, especially from someone who knows things that she knows too.
And you love reactive characters.
Yes.
She's reacting to every crazy thing that's happening around her.
Oh, definitely. She's very reactive. It's great.
Next series and books I will mention is the Gentleman Bastards series, with the first book being The Lies of Locke Lamora. Now, for me, I've read all 3 books that are currently out, give them all 5 stars. You've read book 1 twice.
Yes.
And actually, next year on the Bookish Drama Discord, we're going to be buddy reading the first 3 books.
Yeah. So this is also a favorite for me. I definitely love a good heist plot, and this is a fantastic example of that. But more than that, Locke Lamora is really a great story of, brotherhood and friendship, and just the dynamics between the characters is phenomenal.
Yeah, and I love the storytelling technique because Scott Lynch will write stuff in the present timeline, but then jump back and forth between the past and the present. And at first, you're not quite sure what's going on, but then it's just fun to get the full picture that way.
Yeah.
I will admit book 1 is still my favorite, but like I mentioned, books 2 and 3, I also give 5 stars. So it'll be fun to see if you agree with me.
I kind of have an early prediction that book 3 may be my favorite, which is going to be a very hot take if that's the case. I do know, or I have heard, that book 3 is kind of where you delve more into the politics of some things going on and maybe a little bit more of the magic system. And so I'm very intrigued by those aspects. And that's why I think it could have the potential to be my favorite.
Okay.
So next up, another mutual favorite is The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. And I have read further in the series than Jake has.
Yeah, I read this series way back when, and I kind of, not permanently DNF'd, but I softly DNF'd after I started to read book 14. At that point...
Is it Ghost Story or Cold Days?
Cold Days.
Okay, I can't remember when it went switch now.
Yeah, but I kind of had enough of Dresden. I was reading them back to back to back, and I was just like, I need to just wait until more books are out. So that's kind of my plan. But yeah, I really did enjoy my time with Dresden.
I am caught up on the series. I've read all of the things, including the short story collections and the novella. What's your favorite Dresden era, or your favorite Dresden book?
So my 2 favorites are book 7, Deadbeat. The ending to that is like one of the highlights of the series for me. But then also like kind of like the chunk of books that are really good for me are 10, 11, and 12. And 12 might be my favorite.
12 is the popular favorite for sure. I am not sure whether 10 or 12 is my favorite.
both good choices.
Yeah, but definitely 10 through 12 is my favorite Dresden era so far. Although that has the potential to change with the new books because I really enjoyed Battleground, which is also maybe a bit of a hot take because that one is polarizing.
I don't know if we agree on which ones are our least favorite.
I don't even know if I could tell you which one is my least favorite.
My least favorites were because I have the unpopular opinion. I really liked book 1 and I really liked book 2. A lot of people don't like book 2. But my least favorites were book 3, 4, and 5 because that's where you kind of get more of a grand picture of all what's happening. I kind of wanted the books just to be about like just a mystery of the week kind of deal, which were kind of what the first 2 books were, but then it kind of spiraled into more.
I disagree. I liked when it became more of a bigger picture kind of thing.
Most people do.
Yeah. I think the Dresden book I remember the least about is probably book 9. So I don't know if that is maybe my least favorite.
That's also one of my least favorites.
Okay.
Simply because I don't remember it.
Yeah. I also didn't really love Cold Days.
Okay, well I DNF'd that book.
But Skin Game was great. I think like the pacing, because Changes is such an explosive one, and then the pacing of the 2 following that are kind of slowed down. And there's just other things about Cold Days that would be spoilery for me to say, but that aren't really my cup of tea. And so there's kind of that reasoning going there too. But anyways.
Dresden is just a really fun series. It's not really one that you have to like pay super close attention to when you're reading it. Kind of a comfort read a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's better if you pay close attention though.
Yeah, I would kind of just put them on and be like, okay, this is fun.
Yeah, you're missing out if you just do that.
Oh, okay.
I'm excited to reread them one day and catch on to a lot more.
I will reread them when, like, we get further down. Like, the last couple of books are coming along, and I'll probably just do, like, one a month until then.
Okay.
But that probably won't happen for a while. He's got, like, a few more books left at least to write.
Oh, yeah. Fair few.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So one of our mutual favorite fantasy series that we actually did a big read-along for over on the Bookish Tournament Discord either last year or the year before was the Song of Shattered Sands series by Bradley P. Bulio, with the first book being 12 Kings and Sherikai.
Yeah.
And this is definitely one of my all-time favorite series. I loved all of the books, and it's a 6-book series, and it has, I think, 7 novellas that are all worth reading.
Oh, yeah. The novellas were the highlights of the series for me. I think I rated, like, 3 of the novellas, at least 2 of them anyway, higher than I rated any of the books in the series.
Yeah, one of the novellas, we should actually get that out. So the novella that we're talking about that we both gave 5 stars is The Doors at Dusk and Dawn. And this novella, sometimes you can read fantasy novellas and they don't really have too much to do with the actual story. But the good thing about these novellas is that they all kind of have a clear connection to the main series. And this one was just a lot of fun. It's got a horse on the cover. It's all about this kind of big, giant horse race, but it's got a lot of implications for the main character. It's just really well paced and a lot of action, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And this is one you could read without having read the series, but you'll benefit more if you've read the series up to this point too.
So what was your favorite book in the series?
Definitely, without a question, my favorite was book 3, A Veil of Spears.
And why is that?
I think it just had the most answers to things I was wondering about. And I think this is also the point where you start getting additional POVs that I was very curious about.
Okay. So for me, I'm kind of basic when it comes to like what are my favorite books in the series. A lot of the times, it's book 1. I love 12 Kings and Sherikai. I love introductions to series. I don't think you're on the same page with that, but no. I love getting just like the introduction to everything. There's a mystery aspect to everything. You're trying to figure out what's going on. So a lot of the, not always, but a lot of the times book 1 ends up being my favorite, and it's the case here.
So I am the kind of fantasy reader where I enjoy things more when I already have context for them. If I'm spending too much energy trying to figure things or trying to figure out like a few specific things, I'll be missing like little hints and clues that are dropped throughout. So often when I reread series and I pick up on those because I'm not so focused on the main mystery, I get a lot more enjoyment out of the series.
Yeah. So there's examples like Storm of Swords is my favorite Song of Ice and Fire, but it's going to be fun when you read Stormlight because The Way of Kings is definitely my favorite. They're all
Definitely
five.
not going to be my favorite.
They're all 5 stars, but for you, you're gonna love book 2, I think.
Yeah, Words of Radiance. That's what everyone tells me.
We'll see.
Yeah. So another mutual favorite fantasy series for us is Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett, or the Founders Trilogy. I think we both kind of had maybe not quite the same ranking, but we both agree that book 3 is our least favorite.
Oh yeah, that one was one of the biggest disappointments whenever we read that one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think with this series in particular, there are some massive time jumps between the books. And book 3, I feel like really didn't take the time to kind of reorient you as well as it should have.
It had an 8-year time jump.
Okay.
I get mad at 1-year time jumps. 8 years, that's, what are we doing here?
Yeah. I understand the choice to do it, but also, like, it was just the way it was done didn't necessarily work for me.
But yeah, book 1 was definitely the best. And
Yeah.
book 2 I still really liked, but maybe not enough to actually go back and reread that one.
Okay. I wasn't sure if book 1 or 2 was higher on your ranking.
No, book 1's definitely the best.
Okay.
And it's one
We
that
agree.
kind of feels standalone-y, so it could be one that you go back and just reread that one.
Yeah.
And have a full story.
So Foundryside has one of the most interesting sentient objects, and definitely the banter between the main character and the sentient object is top notch.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Also, just discovering the magic system in this one for the first time, and like the heist plot that is involved in book 1 made it shine.
So you can like a book 1 the best in a series.
It's possible, but it's usually not the case.
And the last one that we'll mention here is Jade City.
Jade City!
Jade City!
The Greenbone Saga.
The Greenbone Saga. So I've read the whole trilogy, and you've read book 1
Twice.
Same thing as Lies of Locke Lamora.
Listen, I need to reread in order to continue, okay?
Yeah, so like I said, I've read the whole trilogy. Book 1 was pretty good.
No, it's great. I think I enjoy it even more on reread, because like I said, I'm catching on to more things now that I know things going in.
I'm just saying my experience.
Oh, okay.
So book 1 for me was pretty good. Book 2 for me was also pretty good. I liked it, but it wasn't like my favorite thing ever. It wasn't really until book 3 where everything kind of clicked for me, and I obviously can't spoil it, but book 3 just had a lot of really impactful moments and character moments, and it all clicked for me. So book 3 was definitely my favorite.
Okay.
Which is unusual for me. I usually like book 1s the most, but that's an instance where book 3 was the best.
I have a feeling I'm going to enjoy book 2 the most, just given the title. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, book 1 was still pretty good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I definitely appreciate it more on reread.
Okay.
So those were some of our mutual fantasy favorites, or books that we both agree on. Let us know down in the comments whether you have similar takes to us, very different takes to us. Are there any books that you were surprised to see on here? Any that you're surprised are not on here?
Also, let us know, are there any fantasy series out there that you think that we'll both enjoy together?
Yeah, that's good to know for future read-along potential for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your way out if you want to. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.